Welcome to another Great Cow Basic tutorial for the PIC18FxxQ41 chipset. So we're looking at a series of tutorials, and we're down to tutorial number 6, which is using the reset switch, and we're going to use that as an input and as a master reset today. Let's have a look what we're using as our hardware. We're using the microchip low pin count demo board. I can show you it on the lab here. This is where we left it yesterday. And basically we left it yesterday, when we pushed the buttons, we get the LEDs to come on. Well, we didn't really explain how that all works, so we're going to peel it back a bit further today. I'm waiting for a Curiosity Nano board to come in, so we'll have a look at that when it arrives. So the layout that we're going to be using is the same as yesterday. We've essentially got a switch on this layout here, and that let me bring up the pen. That switch is pulled down to ground, and it's pulled down to the master clear here on oh, look at that, slightly wrong, on RA3. Okay, now this is important. This is the connection that we're going to be using. When we push this button, the LEDs were coming on yesterday. So if we look at the lab, we can see that again from yesterday. Great. So this switch that's on that particular port here has two functions. It can reset the chip, or it can be used as an input, and we were using it as an input. So let's have a look at the PowerPoint to see how we're going to use it either as a reset or a master clear. So there is a switch, as I said yesterday, connected to RA3. It has this circuit that is shown on the board here. That is pulled high, and when you program it, it comes low, resets it, or cut the power. It can go into programming mode. Now, what's important is that the switch, the input RA3, can be controlled through the configuration, and that has two states on this particular chip. So it can be either as a master clear, or as yesterday, as a port defined. So it's an input. Now let me just show you the my desktop so that we can get a good handle on how do we know these things, okay? Because the issue about using microchips is that you don't actually know what that setting is. So what I've got here, I brought in the tool called PICInfo. I'm showing you that on the screen now, and I'm just going to type in this chip, okay, 18FxxQ41, and it shows me the configuration options on this front tab. And if I just bring this down a little bit, I can see that Master Clear, MCLRE, has two options. It's got an internal function or the external, and that's what the PowerPoint says. Now, this star behind it means that Great Cow Basic will select that one for you by default. The other stars also mean these are defaults. Now, the other way to find this out is to go into the data sheet and open up the data sheet, but a very quick way to find out is looking in this PICInfo tool. Let me just show you something that's quite key here, that we're going to look at another chip. Why this tool is quite useful, we'll look at an 18F2550, and we'll look at the master clear. And so why I'm showing you this is that the master MCLRE, the same config switch, is not called the same. It's called on and off. So what is important about this is that you don't assume that the configuration switch is the same for every chip. You must check either using PICInfo or the data sheet to get this switch absolutely correct. So let me just refer back to the chip that we're looking at, the Q41. We have Q41 selected here at the top. I was just making sure. And then down here, I can see that my two options, as I've said, are int MCLR or EXT external MCLR. Now, that's exactly what I've got on my PowerPoint, so we're good to go on to the next part of the tutorial. Now, so you've got to remember that do not use this as the general. This switch is not the general case for every chip. It is very specific to this chip. So let's move on. Let's have a look at what we're going to do in the tutorial. So we're going to set the RA3 up as an input. We're going to initialize it, and then we're going to check the reset switch, which is RA3, and just toggle that LED. But then we're going to turn it into a reset. And then after we initialize, it will reset every time, and we'll see the difference. And I'll talk you through some of the different levels of functionality. So this will initialize the board. We're going to flash an LED just to show that we've had a reset. And if the reset button is pressed, we're going to just set the state of the LED. Very simple. But the key here is that using RA3 as a reset or as an input. Okay, let's have a look at the example code that we've got laid out for us today. Great, here we go. So we're actually in tutorial, this is tutorial 6, code 80. This is great. Now, what I've got in here, let me have a look where I am. Great, what I've got here is a thing called a config, because underneath the chip and underneath the option explicit that we had in the previous, I've added in this config line, and you can cut and paste that config line from PICInfo. You can use the cut and paste option in that tool to bring it in, but I've manually brought it in ahead of time here, and I'm setting the master clear to the internal master clear, so that's it's going to set it up correctly for us. Then I've set up the LEDs exactly the same as we had them yesterday. No different at all. And then a slight tweak to what I've done. I'm going to flash the LEDs 10 times just so that we know it's had a reset. And then if I've got the reset button pressed down, which is off, which is the 0 volt, then just turn the LED on. So let's look at that working, and then we'll talk us through what's actually happening. So I'm just programming it. It's flashed just to say it's flashing. And when it resets, you will see one LED flash. And I can cut the power to this board, so we can, here we go, we see that LED flash here. Let me just hold that down, and that tells us it's had a reset. So this is an input. When I push this down, the LED comes on. So we can see that with a config statement of int master clear, it's an input port. So let's turn it to its other option, and we're going to turn it to the external. And we're going to recompile. No change to the code. It flashes as it programs, but once it's completed its flashing programming operation, it will flash 10 times, or it's actually 5 times in the code. So if I now press that, it only flashes. So that means we've now got this switch is now operating as a master reset, which is wonderful, because you may need that in your program. So Great Cow Basic on this specific chip sets that as an input by default. So if you want to use that as a master reset, you must set the external master clear. So let's recap what we did in the code. All right, flashed the one LED RC1 10 times on and off. So you see it came on 5 times on a reset for 100 milliseconds. And then in our do forever loop, I said if the reset button is down or set to 0, then just toggle RC2. So, but the key here is this master clear. You need to set that up in your configuration if you're going to use RA3 as an input or RA3 as a master reset. That was the purpose of this tutorial, is to get that concept across. It's a very important concept that is used many times and misunderstood. So we were using the reset switch today. Tomorrow we're going to be using the switch, the ADC, and bringing it all together. We're going to use the switch, the ADC flash the LEDs, and we're going to have a reverse. When we push that button, the LEDs are going to go backwards and forwards. So that's the end of this tutorial. Enjoy.